the prison that never failed. The Krillian Maximum Security Station floated in the dead zone between galaxies, a massive structure built from black metal that absorbed all light. For 3,000 years, this prison had held the most dangerous criminals in the known universe. Warlords who had destroyed entire star systems. Mind controllers who had enslaved billions. Reality benders who could tear holes in space itself. The prison had never failed. No one had ever escaped. No one had even tried after the first week of psychological conditioning that broke every prisoner's will to resist. The Krillians were experts at breaking spirits. Their species had evolved as apex predators on a death world where only the strongest survived. They had perfected the art of domination over millions of years. Their prison system was considered the galaxy's most effective rehabilitation program, though rehabilitation was a polite word for what they actually did. They didn't just imprison criminals. They unmade them, stripped away their identity and will, and rebuilt them as obedient servants of galactic law. The success rate was 100%. Until they imprisoned a human. The arrival of prisoner 7743. Commander Vexthor stood in the observation tower, his 6 eyes focused on the newest arrival. The human looked small and fragile compared to most species in the prison. She stood barely 6 feet tall with brown skin, dark curly hair pulled back in a simple tie, and brown eyes that scanned her surroundings with calm intelligence. She wore the standard gray prisoner uniform that hung loosely on her thin frame. Her name was Captain Maya Chen, formerly of the Earth Defense Force. Her crimes, according to the Galactic Tribunal, were severe. She had refused a direct order from the Galactic Council to surrender her ship during a territorial dispute. When threatened with force, she had defended her vessel and crew, destroying 3 Council warships in the process. 47 Galactic soldiers had died. The Council had made an example of her, sentencing her to life in the Krillian prison. Vexthor had read her file with interest. Humans were a new species to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They were considered primitive by most standards, aggressive and emotional, lacking the mental discipline of older species. This human had refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Vexthor found this fascinating in an academic way. He wondered how long her defiance would last. Begin the conditioning, he ordered his assistant, a younger Krillian named Rathkiss. The first week of breaking. The conditioning chamber was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Prisoners were placed in sensory deprivation tanks where they floated in darkness, completely isolated from all external stimuli. At random intervals, painful neural pulses would fire through their nervous system. The pain wasn't enough to cause physical damage, but it was enough to create psychological terror. Prisoners never knew when the next pulse would come. The uncertainty, the isolation, and the pain combined to break even the strongest minds. Most prisoners begged for release within 3 days. The strongest lasted 5 days before their will crumbled. The Krillians would then offer them a choice: accept their guilt, accept their reconditioning, and the pain would stop. Every prisoner accepted. Every prisoner broke. Maya Chen had been in the conditioning chamber for 7 days. Vexthor stood outside her tank, reviewing the monitoring data with growing confusion. The human's brain activity showed stress, certainly. Her heart rate was elevated. But there was something else, something the monitors couldn't quite capture. Every time a neural pulse fired, her brain activity would spike in patterns the Krillians had never seen before. Instead of breaking down, she seemed to be adapting. "This is abnormal," Rathkiss said, his voice uncertain. "Her psychological profile should show complete deterioration by now. Instead, she appears to be entering a meditative state between pulses." Vexthor activated the communication system. "Prisoner 7743, this is Commander Vexthor. You have been in conditioning for 7 days. This is unprecedented. You are only prolonging your suffering. Accept your reconditioning and the pain will end." Through the speakers, he heard Maya's voice. It was hoarse from 7 days without speaking, but it was steady. "Commander, with all due respect, I'm not interested in your offer. You cannot resist forever, Vexthor said. Every being has a breaking point. Maybe, Maya replied. But I haven't found mine yet. And I don't think you have either. The human mind. Vexthor increased the conditioning intensity. The neural pulses came more frequently, the isolation was extended to 10 days, and they added auditory hallucinations designed to induce paranoia and despair. These enhanced methods had been reserved for only the most resistant prisoners in the prison's history. They had never failed. Maya-chan endured. On day 15, Vexthor entered the conditioning chamber personally for the first time in his career. He had Maya removed from the tank and brought to an interrogation room. She looked thin and exhausted, her eyes sunken, her movements slow. But when she looked at him, her gaze was clear and alert. How? Vexthor asked simply. How are you doing this? Maya smiled weakly. You want to know the secret of human endurance? Yes. She leaned forward. We're really good at being stubborn. It's kind of our thing. You see, Commander, you've studied a lot of species. You've learned how to break them. But you don't understand humans yet. We're still new to your galaxy, and that means you don't have the manual on us. Vexthor's scales rippled with irritation. Every species has psychological weaknesses. Pain, isolation, fear, these are universal. They are, Maya agreed. But humans have this weird thing we do. When things get really bad, when the situation seems impossible, we don't give up. We get creative. We find meaning in suffering. We tell ourselves stories about endurance and survival. We make it a challenge. We turn pain into a test of will. She gestured around the room. You want to know what I've been doing in that tank for 15 days? I've been counting. I've been doing math problems in my head. I've been remembering every book I ever read, every movie I ever watched, every conversation I ever had. I've been composing music. I've been designing spacecraft. I've been living entire lifetimes in my imagination. Vexthor stared at her. That is impossible. The sensory deprivation should prevent such activities. Should, Maya said. But here's the thing about humans. We don't really need external stimulation to keep our minds active. We can create entire worlds inside our heads. Every human does it. We call it imagination, daydreaming, creativity. You tried to isolate me from the universe, but you can't isolate me from my own mind. The challenge. Vexthor reported his findings to the prison council. The other Krillian commanders were skeptical. They decided to continue the conditioning for 30 more days with maximum intensity. If the humans still refused to break, they would reassess their methods. Maya endured 30 more days. Then 60. Then 90. Word spread through the prison. The other prisoners, already reconditioned and compliant, heard whispers of the human who wouldn't break. Even in their altered states, something stirred in them. A memory of who they had been before the Krillians broke them. The guards noticed changes in behavior. Small acts of defiance. Prisoners taking longer to follow orders. Nothing major, nothing that violated protocols, but something had shifted. The absolute control the Krillians maintained was developing cracks. Vexthor realized the human was becoming a symbol. Her resistance was inspiring others, even in their broken states. This was unprecedented and dangerous. He called Maya to his office on day 120. She walked in without assistance now, having regained some strength during her brief periods out of the tank. She sat across from him, meeting his 6 eyes with her too. You are disrupting the entire prison, Vexthor said. Your resistance is having unforeseen effects on the other prisoners. Good, Maya said simply. Why do you persist? What is the point? You cannot escape. You cannot win. You will spend the rest of your life here. Why not accept reconditioning and at least find peace? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Because peace isn't the same as surrender. Because once I accept your reconditioning, I stop being me. I become whatever you want me to be. And I'd rather die as myself than live as someone else's puppet. That is illogical, Vexthor said. Identity is not fixed. All beings change over time. Change and erasure aren't the same thing, Maya countered. You don't offer rehabilitation. You offer obliteration. You destroy who someone is and replace them with a compliant drone. That's not justice. That's murder by another name. Vexthor felt something unfamiliar stirring in his mind. Doubt. In 3,000 years, the Krillian prison system had been unquestioned. It worked. It was efficient. It served the galaxy's needs. But this human was forcing him to see it differently. What would you have us do? He asked. Many of the prisoners here are genuinely dangerous. They have committed atrocities. Hold them accountable without destroying them, Maya said. Imprison them, yes. Prevent them from causing more harm. But don't erase who they are. Give them time to reflect, to grow, to change on their own terms. Some won't change. Some are beyond redemption. But some might surprise you. And if we refuse? If we continue your conditioning indefinitely? Maya smiled. Then I'll continue to resist indefinitely. Because that's what humans do, Commander. We endure. We persist. We find hope in hopeless places. And we never, ever give up on who we are. The transformation begins. Vexthor made a decision that would change the Krillian prison system forever. He ordered Maya's conditioning stopped. She was moved to a standard cell with access to books, exercise, and limited social interaction with other prisoners. He told the prison council it was a new experimental approach, studying the human's resistance to develop better conditioning methods. But that was a lie. The truth was that Maya Chen had done something no prisoner had ever done. She hadn't broken Vexthor's system. She had broken Vexthor himself. She had forced him to question everything he believed about imprisonment, rehabilitation, and justice. He began observing her interactions with other prisoners. Even though they had been reconditioned, something happened when they were near her. They began to remember fragments of who they had been. They asked questions. They showed emotions beyond compliance. Maya treated everyone with dignity. She listened to their stories, the pieces they could remember of their lives before reconditioning. She shared her own story, her life on Earth, her service in the Defense Force, the moment she chose to defend her crew rather than surrender to what she believed was an unjust order. The other prisoners responded to her humanity. Slowly, painfully, they began to reclaim pieces of themselves. Vexthor watched all of this from his observation tower. And for the first time in his long career, he wondered if the Krillians had been wrong. If their perfect system was actually perfectly cruel. If breaking prisoners' wills wasn't rehabilitation at all, but simply convenient control. The human who wouldn't surrender was teaching an entire prison, guards and prisoners alike, what it meant to remain human in the face of dehumanization. And the revolution had only just begun. The ripple effect. 6 months after Maya Chen arrived at the Krillian maximum security station, the prison was unrecognizable. Officially, nothing had changed. The same protocols were in place. The same conditioning chambers operated. The same guards patrolled the corridors. But beneath the surface, everything was different. Commander Vexthor stood in his observation tower, reviewing reports that troubled him deeply. Prisoner compliance was down 12%. Guard efficiency was down 8%. There had been 3 incidents of prisoners refusing direct orders, something that hadn't happened in centuries. The prison council was demanding explanations. The explanation was simple: Maya Chen was teaching the prisoners to be people again. It started small. Maya would sit in the common area during recreation periods, and other prisoners would gravitate toward her. She would tell them stories about Earth, about human history, about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. She talked about scientists who failed thousands of times before succeeding. Athletes who overcame impossible injuries. Artists who created beauty in the midst of war and poverty. The thing about humans, she would say, is that we're really good at being bad at things. We fail constantly. We make mistakes. We hurt each other and ourselves. But we keep trying. We keep learning. We keep hoping that tomorrow might be better than today. The reconditioned prisoners, whose wills had been broken and reshaped, listened to these stories with growing fascination. Something in Maya's words bypassed their conditioning, speaking to deeper parts of themselves that the Krillians hadn't been able to completely erase. The prisoner who remembered. His name had been Thorax of the Hive Collective, though he barely remembered that now. The Krillians called him Prisoner 2891. He had been convicted of genocide, having ordered the destruction of an entire colony world during the Hive Wars. He had been reconditioned 15 years ago and had served as a model prisoner ever since, completely compliant, completely broken. But after 3 months of listening to Maya's stories, something changed. Memories started surfacing. Not of his crimes, those remained mercifully blurred, but of who he had been before the war. A young Hive warrior who had loved music, who had written poetry, who had believed he was serving a greater good. One day during recreation, Thorax approached Maya with tears streaming down his face. "I remember," he said in his clicking, insectoid voice. "I remember who I was. Before the war. Before the crimes. Before they broke me." Maya took his clawed hand gently. "That's good. Remembering is the first step." "But I did terrible things," Thorax said. "I killed millions. I deserve to be broken." "Maybe," Maya said. "I'm not here to judge what you did. But I do know that breaking you doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't bring anyone back. It just creates more victims. You can't change the past, but you can choose who you want to be now." Thorax's compound eyes focused on her. "What if I don't know who I want to be?" "Then you figure it out. One day at a time. That's all any of us can do." This conversation was monitored by the guards. It was reported to Vex Thor. And it confirmed what he already knew: Maya Chen was systematically undoing years of reconditioning simply by treating prisoners like people. The council's demand. The prison council summoned Vex Thor for an emergency meeting. The 5 senior Krillian commanders sat in judgment, their scales dark with anger. High Commander Zarthal spoke first, his voice cold with fury. "You have allowed the human prisoner to corrupt our entire facility. Compliance is at the lowest level in recorded history. Reconditioned prisoners are experiencing spontaneous personality resurgence. This is a disaster." Vex Thor stood at attention. "The human has not violated any protocols. She follows all rules. She has not attempted escape or violence. She simply talks to other prisoners. And in talking, she undoes everything we have built," Zarthal said. 3,000 years of perfected rehabilitation, destroyed by one primitive human's conversations. This cannot continue. You will place her in permanent isolation immediately and reinstate maximum conditioning." Vex Thor felt something he had never experienced before, the desire to disobey a direct order. "High Commander, I request permission to try an alternative approach." "Denied. The human will be isolated today." "With respect, High Commander, I believe we should study what is happening here. The human has revealed a flaw in our system that we were blind to. Perhaps we should learn from this rather than simply suppress it." Zarthal's scales flashed dangerously. "You question the Krillian method?" "I question whether our method is as effective as we believed. If one human can undo our conditioning simply through conversation, perhaps the conditioning was never as complete as we thought. Perhaps we have been lying to ourselves about what we accomplish here." The room went silent. What Vex Thor had just said bordered on heresy. The Krillian prison system was a source of pride for their species, a demonstration of their superiority. To question it was to question Krillian identity itself. High Commander Zarthal stood slowly. "You are relieved of command, effective immediately. Report for psychological evaluation. You have clearly been compromised by the human prisoner." The guard's choice. News of Vexthor's removal spread through the prison within hours. The guards were confused. Many of them had served under Vexthor for decades. They respected him. And more importantly, many of them had also been watching Maya Chen's effect on the prisoners. They had seen something remarkable happening, something that made them question their own roles. That night, Guard Captain Kelrath made a decision that would change everything. She went to Maya's cell and opened the door. "I'm not helping you escape," Kelrath said quickly. "But I am asking for your help. Commander Vexthor is being removed and reconditioned because of you. Because of what you've taught the prisoners. The council wants to isolate you permanently." Maya stood up from her bunk. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to talk to the guards. The way you talk to the prisoners. Most of us have served here our whole lives. We've never questioned the system. But watching you these past months, seeing what happens when you treat prisoners with dignity and respect, it's made us wonder if we've been wrong." "You want me to start a revolution," Maya said. "I want you to help us see the truth. Whatever that truth is." Maya smiled. "Okay. Let's talk. The truth about breaking." Over the next week, Maya met with small groups of guards during their off-duty hours. She didn't preach or lecture. She just talked. She told them about human prisons, about how Earth had struggled for centuries with questions of justice and rehabilitation. She admitted that humans didn't have all the answers, that Earth's prison systems were flawed and often unjust. "But here's what we learned," Maya said to a group of 20 guards gathered in a storage bay. "Breaking someone doesn't rehabilitate them. It just breaks them. When you destroy someone's identity and rebuild them as obedient servants, you haven't addressed why they committed crimes in the first place. You've just created a different kind of victim." "But many prisoners here are dangerous," one guard objected. "They have destroyed worlds. Killed billions. How do you rehabilitate such beings?" "Maybe you can't rehabilitate all of them," Maya admitted. "Some people are so damaged or dangerous that society needs protection from them. But that doesn't mean you have to destroy who they are. You can imprison them, restrict their freedom, protect others from them, all without erasing their minds." "What is the alternative?" Kelrath asked. Maya took a breath. "You give them time. You give them space to reflect on what they've done. You provide education, therapy, opportunities for growth. You treat them like beings capable of change rather than machines that need reprogramming. And yes, some won't change. Some will remain dangerous forever. But some might surprise you. Some might become better than they were." Another guard spoke up. "But isn't that harder? Doesn't it require more resources, more time, more risk?" "Yes," Maya said simply. "It's much harder. It's messy, eh? It's less efficient. But it's also more honest. It acknowledges that justice isn't about control. It's about accountability, growth, and the possibility of redemption." The uprising of conscience. Within 2 weeks, over 60% of the prison's guards had met with Maya. They shared her ideas with each other. They began questioning orders. They started treating prisoners differently, with more respect, more humanity. The prison council responded with force. They sent a military contingent to restore order, to isolate Maya permanently, and to recondition any guard who had been corrupted. But something unexpected happened. When the military contingent arrived, they found the guards standing in formation outside Maya's cell. All of them. Over 300 Krillian guards, armed and armored, blocking access to the human prisoner. Captain Kelrath stepped forward. "We will not allow prisoner 7743 to be placed in isolation. We will not allow our colleagues to be reconditioned. And we formally request a review of the Krillian prison system by an independent galactic authority." The military commander was shocked. "You would betray your species? Your duty?" "We are fulfilling our duty," Kelrath said. "Our duty is to justice, not to blind obedience. The human taught us that." The standoff lasted 3 days. The military contingent couldn't force their way past the guards without causing casualties. The prison council was paralyzed, unable to understand how their perfect system had collapsed so completely. Finally, the Galactic Council itself intervened, sending peacekeepers and mediators. They interviewed Maya, the guards, the prisoners, and the prison council. They reviewed the Krillian conditioning methods in detail. The report they issued shocked the galaxy. The end of breaking. The Galactic Council's conclusion was clear: the Krillian reconditioning system violated fundamental sapient rights. It constituted psychological torture and personality destruction. It would be banned throughout galactic space, effective immediately. The Krillian government protested, but they were outvoted. Other species, inspired by Maya's resistance, began examining their own prison systems. A wave of reform swept through the galaxy, changing how civilizations thought about justice, punishment, and rehabilitation. Maya Chen was released from prison, her sentence commuted in recognition of the broader questions her case had raised about the legitimacy of the Galactic Council's legal system. She returned to Earth a hero, though she always insisted she hadn't done anything heroic. "I just refused to give up who I was," she would say in interviews. "That's not heroic. That's just human." But she had done something more than that. She had taught an entire prison, guards and prisoners alike, what it meant to remain human in the face of dehumanization. She had shown that resistance wasn't always about violence or escape. Sometimes resistance was simply refusing to let others define who you were. Commander Vex Thor, freed from his own reconditioning process after the Council's ruling, requested a transfer to work in the new rehabilitation programs being established across the galaxy. He wanted to help build something better, something more just. Maya helped him design the first pilot program, combining human psychological research with Krillian organizational efficiency. The Krillian Maximum Security Station was transformed into a model facility, one where prisoners were treated with dignity while still being held accountable for their crimes. Some prisoners embraced the opportunity for growth. Others remained dangerous and confined. But all of them retained their identities, their memories, their essential selves. And it all started because one human refused to surrender. Years later, Maya Chen gave a speech at the inauguration of the Galactic Institute for Prison Reform. She stood before representatives from hundreds of worlds and told them the truth she had learned in her darkest hours. Every civilization faces this question: what do we do with those who harm others? How do we balance justice, safety, and human dignity? The easy answer is control. Break them, reshape them, make them compliant. It's efficient. It's clean. It makes us feel safe. But it's wrong. Because when we destroy someone's identity in the name of justice, we become the very thing we claim to oppose. We become the destroyers, the oppressors, the monsters. True justice is harder. It requires us to see even criminals as people. It requires patience, resources, and faith that beings can change. It won't always work. Some will fail. Some will remain dangerous. But at least we'll face those failures with our own humanity intact. The galaxy asked me to surrender who I was. I refused. And in refusing, I learned something important: we are all defined by what we refuse to surrender. Our compassion. Our dignity. Our belief that every being has inherent worth. These things are not weakness. They are strength. So I ask you all, what will you refuse to surrender? What lines will you not cross, even when it's easier, even when everyone else is crossing them? Answer that question, and you'll know who you really are. The applause was thunderous. But Maya wasn't thinking about the crowd. She was thinking about a prison in the darkness between galaxies, about a commander who learned to question his orders, about guards who chose conscience over obedience, and about prisoners who reclaimed their stolen selves. She thought about the galaxy she had helped change, one conversation at a time, one act of resistance at a time, one refusal to surrender at a time. And she smiled, because she knew the most important truth of all: you don't need to be powerful to change the world. You just need to be stubborn enough to remain yourself, no matter what. That was the human way. And now, it was becoming the galactic way too.